Coming up on Network Africa. South African Parliament opens debate on Cyril Ramaphosa's corruption report. United States to commit $55 billion to Africa ahead of summit. Plus, Ethiopia rebels praise flow of medical aid into Tigray. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. Today we begin in South Africa, where the country's parliament has begun a special sitting to debate a report by a panel of legal experts which found that President Cyril Ramaphosa may have broken his oath of office. Proceedings have kicked off with a discussion over whether a vote to accept or reject the report will be held by a secret ballot. President Ramaphosa's fate will be in the hands of MPs as they vote on whether he should be impeached. But the African National Congress Party has told its members of parliament to reject the report. This is in connection with the Pala farm scandal hanging over the president, in which Mr. Ramaphosa has been accused of a cover-up following the theft of foreign currency at his private farm back in 2020. Evidence of potential misconduct after allegations that he concealed the theft of foreign currency from his game farm has fueled calls for him to step down. However, Mr. Ramaphosa has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. Let's talk to Channel TV South Africa Bureau Chief Betty de Beer, who joins us virtually from Johannesburg, South Africa. Betty, good to see you today.
Hello, Joke. Good to see you too.
So this is a decisive week for President Ramaphosa as his political future hangs in the balance. Give us an update on what's expected at the Parliament sitting.
Well, the Parliament sitting is still going on. It started about 1 o'clock or so, or 2. And they started by giving their statements, various parties, no surprises as to who will support what. They had made their positions clear earlier. But at the moment, and they all made their speech, some told the middle, the fence, saying that, look, you can adopt this report in principle, but wait for the outcome of the president's judicial review application. And the ANC, of course, or most of the ANC, if I'll put it that way, do not support the adoption of that report. The DA supports the adoption, and some of the other smaller parties like COPE, NFP, and Al-Jamaa, they all on the side of the ANC. But now they called out, after all the statements, they called out the vote, and the nays had it. Meanwhile, the largest opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, called for division, and they took a break so that they will now call them one by one, each member of parliament to state out their vote clearly. So that's where they are now. They just concluded the ANC. Incidentally, 4 people from the ANC voted in support of the adoption of that report. I don't know, I'm not sure it will make much of a difference, given that there's some of the opposition parties who are on the side of the ANC. Spectacular among that is the Minister for Cooperative Governance, that's Nkosi Dlamini Zuma, and the former minister, or the former premier of the Northwest Province, Suprema Mapilo, who said they're in support of the adoption of the report. Former Health Minister, who is the opponent of the president in the upcoming National Congress of the ANC, Zweli Mkhize, and another minister for tourism, that's Lindiwe Sisulu, left the parliament after the first vote. At least I saw Lindiwe Sisulu earlier, but she wasn't there when the call out happened, so she didn't state her position clearly. So ANC is concluded. Right now they're going on with the Democratic Alliance. If it goes through, they will now decide if they're going ahead with the suggestion by the Good Party, which said adopt it in principle, but wait for the outcome of the president's judicial review before you go ahead with the impeachment process. or those who are saying, I mean, if it goes through, then let's constitute that panel or the committee, impeachment committee, which will now investigate based on the report that they've received.
So let's take a look at the voting process itself. You know, some have said that it should be, the Speaker had ruled that it would be a public vote, but some, opposition parties are arguing that it should be in secret. What does this really mean? Are we seeing fear here on the parts of the, MPs?
Some had concerns knowing that there are divisions within the ruling African National Congress, and a lot of division leading up to the National Congress starting on Friday. But there were those members of parliament, members of the ANC in parliament, who had voiced their opposition to the party not wanting to hold the president to account immediately, saying they would support the report. That report is not binding, by the way. So these are the people, and there's some other members of parliament who wouldn't, but not just in the ANC, who wouldn't have wanted to call out their votes, knowing probably some gains that they have on the other side, because they're all friends. So these are someone actually went to the police station to report that he received death threats. Somebody from one of the parties, I think the PAC or so, I'm not quite sure of the party, a smaller opposition party. So some may have been scared, or some may not have wanted the line that they're towing to be out in the open, but they can't avoid that. It's already out in the open, because after the first year and near, which was just the call out, everybody shouted. The DA called for that division. After the break, they now started calling them by name. They call you by name, you state your stand. So from the ANC, about 4 people who came out to say they support the adoption of the report, and then 2 who were absent from that second round of voting.
Right. So, the president has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, and he has said he's done nothing wrong. But, have you, in all his appearances, in all his talk about, this issue, do you see confidence in him? What's the impeachment process like in South Africa? Do you think he's afraid that he might be impeached after all?
I'm not quite sure he's afraid about that. What may be worrying him right now is that conference where anything can happen, the 55th the National Congress of the ANC, where he would do everything, I'm sure, to retain his position as the party president. Apart from being for state presidency, he's still the state president till 2024, when the elections are called, except the other investigations that are ongoing, like the Hawks, who are still investigating the Para farm issue, South Africa Reserve Bank over the large amount of money. If for some reason they find him wanting and he is charged, according to the rules of the ANC that they agreed in 2017 at the same NASREC at their Congress, he may have to step aside as the party president. And he may not. Maybe all the reports will come out after he has been re-elected. But if he's re-elected and the reports come out and he's found wanting and he's actually charged, he may be recalled by the party. He may have to step aside, and probably the next person who will be the party deputy president may, have to take the position. So I'm sure his main worry, and there's so many disputes regarding the nominations for that Congress, especially for the NEC, which is more or less the powerhouse of the party, apart from the branches that do the nomination. So I'm sure that's the major worry for him. He's a lawyer. He has strong lawyers around him. So the legal aspect, I'm sure he can buy time till that national conference is done. Maybe he'll know which step to go. But I think his main worry right now is that Congress that is coming up, what can happen at that Congress. And then if for some reason, the outcome of the other investigations come out around that time or even after, his position is still a bit shaky. He's not coasting free just yet, but I'm sure that's part of his major worries right now.
Yes, and politics is quite a funny business. People lay in wait for you.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, people actually lay in wait for you to say, we're going to get you at some point. Someone like Mrs. Zuma, I believe, was his main, opponent in 2019. She's one of those that, voted to adopt this report. Do you think, it's payback time, in her eyes?
Well, I guess so. But I don't know if her voting to adopt the report will make a difference. It's still a question of numbers here. But at least in the face of the country, she has come out to take her stand. And then they're still going to face themselves, although she's not in the running for presidency again. But there are many members of the party who are feeling that the application of the strict rules, that they're not applying it equally, according to the members. If some have been told to step aside, there's some who have been disqualified, some have headed to court. But for Nkosazana, well, hey, the nation has seen her stand. She didn't hide behind anything, but probably abstaining or all that. She came out to say, I vote, as the way she put it, as disciplined member of the ANC, I vote yes, before the three other members, who did the same. But payback, I don't know if those 4 or 6 votes that are against the ANC will make a difference if some of the smaller parties are going to probably support or reject that report.
Yeah, thank you for your elaborate update on this matter. Betty Dibia, Channel CV, South Africa Bureau Chief.
Thank you, Joke.
Well, staying in South Africa, but away from politics and to health matters, the country's Aspen Pharmacare has finalized agreement securing $30 million from the Gates Foundation and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. The Farmgate company says that the funds would be used to help make affordable vaccines for Africa. In August, Aspen announced a deal with the Serum Institute of India to make and sell 4 Aspen-branded vaccines for the continent as it looked to use its near-idle COVID-19 vaccine production lines. Aspen said the 10-year agreement with Serum Institute would be supported by the funding from Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations and the Gates Foundation. The Serum Institute agreement provides for Aspen to make and distribute 4 vaccines commonly administered in Africa. And as the United States President Joe Biden prepares to host the U.S.-Africa Summit this week, the U.S. will commit $55 billion to Africa over the next 3 years. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the United States is bringing the resources to the table during the summit, adding that the United States' commitment to invest in the African continent compares favorably to any other country. Mr. Sullivan adds that Mr. Biden will stage a dinner on Wednesday night for about 50 African leaders and announce U.S. support for the African Union to join the group of 20 major economies.
Working closely with Congress, the U.S. will commit $55 billion to Africa over the course of the next 3 years across a wide range of sectors to tackle the core challenges of our time. These commitments build on the United States' long-standing leadership and partnership in development, economic growth, health, and security in Africa over the past 3 decades. I would say 3 things make me confident that we will have a positive result from the summit. The first is we are bringing the resources to the table in significant numbers. And if you compare what the United States is committing over the next 3 years to what any other country is committing, I think we stack up extremely favorably. Second, how did we design the agenda for this summit? It's not a dictation from Washington. It's not lecturing or preaching from Washington. We went to African nations themselves and the African Union and said, what are your priorities? What is your vision? And in fact, as I mentioned earlier, the entire first substantive session that the president will chair at the summit is on Agenda 2063. That is not an American document. It is not an American vision. It is the African Union's document and the African Union's vision. So we are lifting up African voices and African priorities in what we are doing at this summit. And the entire summit is designed around that basic ethos.
Still ahead on Network Africa. Well, as it smells and again looks like Christmas, a Cape Town home decked in thousands of lights spreads festive joy. Details in a moment. Welcome back. The United States has imposed financial sanctions on 4 Zimbabweans, including the son of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. It accuses Emmerson Mnangagwa Jr. of being linked to the businessman Kudakwashe Tagwere, who is already under U.S. sanctions for alleged corruption. The Treasury Department says over the last 5 years, Mr. Tagwere has used a combination of opaque business dealings and his ongoing relationship with the president to grow his business empire dramatically and rake in millions of dollars. President Mnangagwa is already under U.S. sanctions. In a statement, the Treasury Department urged Zimbabwe's government to address what it calls the root causes of many of the country's ills, including corrupt elites abusing institutions for their personal benefit. The health authorities in Ethiopia's Tigray region have commended the flow of medical supplies into the war-torn region following the peace agreement signed between the federal government and the rebel forces. The Tigray Health Bureau has said basic medicines and medical equipment are flowing into Tigray and being distributed to health institutions following the ceasefire. However, the health office said the supply still did not meet the demand in the region. The head of Tigray Health Office, Dr. Emmanuel Haley, said one good news is that the first cargo plane landed last Thursday carrying vaccines for children and expressed gratitude to UNICEF for the medicines it received from the Ethiopian government. On Monday, the federal government said it was delivering unlimited humanitarian aid, including food, non-food items and medical supplies to Tigray in the wake of the peace agreement that was signed on November the 12th to end the 2-year devastating war in the north of the country. In the meantime, Ethiopia is facing one of the worst humanitarian crises it has seen in decades that has left 3.6 million children out of school. A joint mission to Ethiopia by a program called Education Cannot Wait and Norway International Development Minister has visited the country to provide educational needs to children in areas affected by conflict, climate change, malnutrition, and displacement.
The United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund says as a result of humanitarian crisis, the number of out-of-school children in Ethiopia has spiked from 3.1 million to 3.6 million in the last 6 months. On a joint high-level visit to the country, delegations and humanitarian partners met with children and adolescents impacted by the ongoing crises in the Oromia and Somali regions.
We have just visited a school in the Somali region of Ethiopia. This school was destroyed in the conflict just 2 years ago, but rebuilt. Now this country is living through its worst drought in 40 years. And we just spoke to the parents group at the school, and they told us how parents often keep their children at home to look after the livestock. But now, with school feeding, when children can come to school and get a healthy meal during the day, parents see that sending their children to school makes a lot of sense.
The recent conflicts in Afar, Amara and Tigray regions have displaced families from their homes, as well as the ongoing violence in parts of Oromia is causing further civilian displacement.
I'm very grateful that we can do this joint project in an area which has been very much afflicted by many years of conflict, of drought, of very unstable situations, where many internally displaced people are having hard times, and then creating schools like this one, where children can be children, having a safe space to learn, having food, getting friends, getting some stability in their lives. I'm very proud and grateful to be part of this project together with Education Cannot Wait, Save the Children and UNICEF. Thank you.
The worst drought in over 4 decades has made matters worse, with 24.1 million people affected, including 12.6 million children. Over 1 million people have been displaced by the drought in the Somali region alone. According to the World Food Programme, 20 million people are in need of food assistance across the country.
One of the biggest crises at the moment is the food insecurity, which has been caused by the drought. As a result, one of the main things that's encouraging children to come to school and keep them in school is school feeding. And what we've seen today is tremendous efforts from the local community to provide a canteen, to provide school meals for children, which brings them here and keeps them here and provides them a future in this terrible conflict-affected and drought-affected crisis.
These ongoing efforts, delivered in partnership with UNHCR, UNICEF, Save the Children, and local partners in support to the government of Ethiopia, are building schools, providing school meals, and ensuring girls and boys affected by multiple crises in the country receive holistic educational support.
Well, the world's only nonuplets, 9 babies born at the same time, have safely returned home to Mali after spending the first 19 months of their lives in Morocco. The babies broke the Guinness World Record for the most children delivered in a single birth to survive. Ahead of the birth in May 2021, the mother, Halima Sisse, now 27, was flown to Morocco for specialist care. Before returning, they had been living with medical support in Casablanca. According to the Malian authorities, the babies, 5 girls and 4 boys, were born by cesarean section at 30 weeks. Medical director of the clinic where they were born said the nonuplets weighed between 500 grams and 1 kg at birth. There were risks that they could have developed health problems due to their premature birth, and they spent the first months of their lives in hospital. They were then moved to an apartment where they received round-the-clock care from the Buha clinic. In the spirit of Christmas, one home in Cape Town, South Africa, is standing out and bringing festive joy to many residents as the family decorates their house in thousands of Christmas lights. The family aims to share the soothing sight with people who have been through a tough time, and as well as those who cannot afford to go out and spend a lot of money. Take a look.
Matthew Haynes, who fell in love with Christmas lights as a child, has decorated his home with thousands of twinkling bulbs, aiming to bring some festive cheer into people's lives for free after a tough few years. People of all ages come in droves to Haynes' home in the coastal town of Fishhook to see the house decked with more than 200,000 Christmas lights.
I fell in love with Christmas lights when I was very young. Started out with 1 strand, then 2, then 5, then 10, then, you know, as you can see, more than I need. And it's always brought me joy. It's always made, it always made my family happy when I was doing it when I was younger. You can bring your kids, you can bring your spouse, you can bring your parents, you can bring your pets, and just come in and, enjoy the lights and get some festive cheer, listen to the music, and just have fun.
Despite the worst power cuts by the state power utility Eskom due to aging fleet of coal-fired power stations, Haynes has luckily been able to avoid his electricity being cut off because of his proximity to a local hospital. Haynes and his wife bear the cost of the lights and the electricity themselves.
We are actually on the hospital grid. We don't load shed. So that's only happened this year, and that was a little bit of Christmas magic.
Local resident Matthew Samuels says he found the lights happy and exciting.
This light does give you a festive move. It's really happy and joyful. It's exciting. It just makes you feel the Christmas spirit.
Other residents in the area are impressed by the decorations.
I think I didn't have an idea of what to actually think. My mom just said, I want to go and show my son or her grandson the lights. So when we got here, I didn't expect this, to be honest. We were actually just saying it's very impressive.
This house really stands out in the community of Fishhook, and it's very well known, and the amount of trouble that the owner goes through. Yeah, it's very important, and they're nice. And a lot of the kids come here.
With a display of Santa Claus in the background, children and elderly women danced around, taking in the festive atmosphere.
A Christmas museum of sorts, I would say. Well, that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.